Coming up on Network Africa, the United Nations says it is urgently seeking $4 billion to avert famine in Africa. Amnesty International accuses the Nigerian army of carrying out extrajudicial killings. And Gambians begin recovering from years of injustice as President Adama Barrow promises a fresh start for the country. Hello and welcome to the program. I'm Temitope Fagbemi. The United Nations says it is seeking billions of dollars in urgent funding for humanitarian and food operations to avert starvation in Africa. This comes as millions of people are at risk of famine in the Horn of Africa and elsewhere. The United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres says the money is needed by the end of March to help nearly 20 million people who risk starvation in Nigeria, Somalia and South Sudan.
Citing armed conflicts and climate change as part of the reasons for the food emergency, Guterres led a call for $5.6 billion in funding for humanitarian operations in the 4 countries this year, of which $4.4 billion are needed by the end of next month to avert a catastrophe.
I'm here with my colleagues to draw the world's attention to the fact that today, more than 20 million people in South Sudan, Somalia, Yemen, and northeast Nigeria are going hungry and facing devastating levels of food insecurity. Famine is already a reality in parts of South Sudan. Unless we act now, it is only a matter of time until it affects other areas and other countries. We are facing a tragedy. We must avoid it becoming a catastrophe. This is preventable if the international community takes decisive action.
Armed conflicts are having devastating humanitarian consequences, and Mr. Guterres calls climate change a key enhancer of the humanitarian problem. The UN chief says women and girls are disproportionately affected by the crisis, and nearly 500,000 children are suffering severe acute malnutrition.
One of the biggest obstacles we face now is funding. Humanitarian operations in these 4 countries require more than $5.6 billion this year. And we need at least $4.4 billion by the end of March to avert a catastrophe. Despite some generous pledges, just $90 million has actually been received so far, around 2 cents for every dollar needed. We are in the beginning of the year, but these numbers are very worrying. Funding shortages have already forced the World Food Programme to cut rations in Yemen by more than half since last year. And without new resources, critical shortages will worsen within months.
Earlier on Wednesday, a senior UN official said more than 7 million people face starvation in Nigeria's insurgency-hit northeastern region and around Lake Chad.
The Cameroonian government has expelled 570 Nigerians, including 313 asylum seekers who fled the insurgency by militant Islamist group Boko Haram. The UNHCR, however, says it is very concerned about the expulsions, and it urged Cameroon to offer asylum and respect international conventions against the forced repatriation of asylum seekers. The UN body also says that it plans to sign an agreement with Cameroon and Nigeria on the 2nd of March for the voluntary return of 85,000 Nigerian refugees. Most of the refugees are at the Minao camp in northeastern Cameroon. South African Minister of Home Affairs Malusi Gigaba says officials will begin to carry out inspections at workplaces to see whether firms are employing undocumented foreigners. He added that over 60 undocumented people employed by retail chain Spar have been arrested. Mr. Gigaba, who says that 33,339 people had been deported in the past year, also warned that firms will be penalized if they breach the law. The minister's comments come amid growing concern that xenophobia is on the rise in South Africa. Here in Nigeria, Amnesty International has urged President Muhammadu Buhari to fulfill his commitment on accountability and ensure security, officers found guilty of maltreatment of citizens face the full wrath of the law. At the launch of its 2016 report, Amnesty International Nigeria condemned the use of the death penalty as capital punishment, insisting that it must be abolished. Our correspondent Gloria Ume Ezuke reports.
Year after year, damning revelations trail the Amnesty International report on Nigeria's human rights violation. The 2016 report is no different. The Human Rights Watch Group once again urged the Nigerian government to keep its promise on accountability and human rights.
Despite the president's repeated promises, the president of Nigeria had made a lot of promises that those security officers that were found guilty of committing these offenses, they are actually going to face the law of the land. But we are yet to see that.
The Human Rights Group made no bones about their stance on the death penalty as capital punishment and torture, advocating a law on these.
Do you decongest the prisons by killing more people and sentencing more people to death? And is that a kind of control measure in a very civilized country like ours? I mean, internationally, we shouldn't be talking about this. What's going on about reforms?
The Special Anti-Robbery Squad, SAS, police, have been using its detention centers for extortion and torture. Nigerian National Assembly is yet to pass anti-torture bill which seek to criminalize and prohibit torture in Nigeria.
Meanwhile, the Nigerian army in a statement described the accusations of human rights abuse and murder leveled against the military as a lie.
Sometimes when you do well, kindly tell us, pat us on the back, so that